Hello, and welcome to the coopgaming.info podcast thing. It's a video cast, and we're planning on making it a podcast. I'm John,
I'm Genevieve.
and together we're the co-op gaming team, I suppose. So just visit our website if you haven't already. We have some previous videos. We kind of changed the camera angle. That's the biggest change we made this time. So anyway, we have a few things to talk about today, I suppose.
Yeah, not really any huge updates to the website or anything.
Yeah, so we posted a new article on the website sort of about video game loot. In specific, we talk about how the loot in Fallout 76 in particular and Fortnite Save the World to a lesser extent have kind of like made looting seem bad, or Genevieve in particular won't loot anything.
Yeah, to us, kind of for very different reasons between the two games, with Fallout just being a terrible experience no matter what you were kind of doing in there. And we played it for about a month, I think.
Yeah, we played pretty hardcore for like at least a month. And
before giving up on it for just being a terrible game.
Right. I mean, at a high level, Fallout 76, just a terrible game. In the article, we talk specifically about how bad the loot is. Kind of in particular, just the fact that the Fallout games in general are like loot games. And it's pretty offensive that the loot system in Fallout 76 is as bad as it is, kind of going from terrible crafting up to terrible inventory management problems, and just the fact that the looting kind of sucks and you always get weighed down and everything.
Yeah, and then in Save the World, we were more just talking about efficiency versus inefficiency in collecting the materials. And
right. Yeah, so in Fortnite Save the World, there's the looting in general is pretty good, but there's a lot of problems kind of with as you progress through the game. The way you collect materials and do stuff like that kind of gets like a little bit more involved, and it gets irritating. They kind of stack up requirements for like getting a lot of materials and stuff like that, and the game isn't always conducive to that, or else you kind of have to like go out of your way in order to always be using your pickaxe on stuff in order to be able to keep up with the amount of materials you need later on.
Well, anyway, check out the article. I feel like we just did a terrible job summarizing or speaking vaguely about what was a lot clearer in the article. And
Right.
If any of you have opinions on, I mean, when people complain about loot, they're usually just complaining about drop rates and not being able to get the stuff that they need. And the article isn't exactly about that, but more about the system of it and how close it is to the way people go about acquiring items in real life, and how kind of games punish or reward the natural way everybody kind of wants to get great stuff or upgrade their stuff or make new things. So let us know what you think, and if you think of games that kind of logic applies to. I think in the article we talked about Monster Hunter World being a game that did have a kind of great loot system that was kind of true to life and easy to understand and use, and didn't kind of punish the player for wanting things or wanting to upgrade their things.
Right. And so, yeah, the article's on the site. We just did a bad job summarizing it, I guess. But yeah, that was a cool part too. And we kind of talk about what like looting is in real life and how it kind of like relates to looting in video games. So anyway, check it out.
Still didn't get our Path of Exile interview or our review.
Oh yeah, well,
or written.
Yeah,
haven't worked on it at all.
That's gonna be a bit of a time coming, just because we had some ideas for like how we wanted to review or talk about Path of Exile, and right now we're kind of like working on a Elder Scrolls Online article that is probably like the biggest thing standing in the way of beginning writing about Path of Exile.
Yeah, long time coming Elder Scrolls review from our time when we used to play it a lot.
Yeah, when we were like compulsive ESO players and we didn't have any lives or anything. So we have kind of like a lot to say about that game, and we'll probably get an article on ESO up sometime in the next like month or something, in case you're interested in seeing that.
So on that note, we stopped playing Path of Exile, at least for now.
Right. So in the last video, I guess you could call that episode 1, we kind of talked about getting better at Path of Exile. And now, like maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks later, we don't play it at all anymore. And so there's like a lot of reasons for that, I guess. But ultimately, it's because the end game in Path of Exile is just a grind. Like you're really just grinding for levels. And then if you ever die, it makes that grind really irritating. It, like if you die in Path of Exile and like your goal is to level up, you like ruin your whole night. So
Well, yeah, we were talking about it the other day. I think the reason that we stopped playing is because the new league is coming out. The league we started in Synthesis is closing. New thing coming out June 3rd, right?
oh yeah, I guess supposedly they have their. I don't know if the patch is coming out June 3rd or if like the new
Yeah, there's like a patch
league.
in the new
Oh,
league.
okay. But
So we had kind of, being beginner first time players, advanced kind of as far as we reasonably could in the amount of time that we played. What level did we end up ending?
we were
high
80,
80s or something.
88, which I know it's really hard to get like past level 95, but if you even get to like level 90 in Path of Exile, you're like pretty hardcore.
Right. And so there was a lot more exciting stuff to discover kind of right outside. I don't know, 6 or 8 days of grinding away from where we were, like the mega bosses in the memory nexus, and a lot of the tougher bosses in the maps and
tougher content types
tougher
too.
content.
Like we saw stuff about like special, like I don't know, mutated maps or just like stuff beyond what we were doing. But we just couldn't like get into doing that grind like every night.
We weren't going to be able to get there between now and
the beginning of the new league.
The
That's
new
right,
league,
too.
right?
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to say about Path of Exile is the grind at the end is so tough. And if you see people talking on Twitter and stuff, they kind of say like, oh, like level 95 for the last like week. I'm trying to get to level 96 tonight, and like hopefully I won't die. And I feel like in Path of Exile, the only break you get from like the grind or the ultimate grind at the end of it is just like making a new character, right? And so I didn't, I mean, Genevieve probably didn't either, but I didn't want to make a new guy right before this new patch came out where supposedly they're like rebalancing all the melee and they're adding like a dodge mechanic and like all kinds of cool stuff like that. So it seemed a little bit silly to like make a new guy like right before all these kind of like sweeping game changes are coming.
Yeah, big changes. And then so that was the overall reason why we just stopped playing for now. And then the more specific reason was, despite overcoming different times over the course of leveling up where we were dying constantly or not able to advance, we reached another spate of kind of terrible and raging deaths.
And like a plateau too.
Yeah.
And just recalling back to the last episode, they are nerfing the Call of Ancients thing. That was kind of like one of our bigger breakthroughs, was getting that. So like God knows how you're going to survive in the end game in Path of Exile without that, but hopefully like you'll be able to build a guy that can, or like maybe with the melee changes
somebody can
might change. Yeah, somebody can and somebody will, but it might not be us.
Yeah. So I was trying to say, I think the last couple of days, there was one day we played where I was kind of fine and John died a bunch of times. It's really hard to keep playing and not be pissed off at that game in particular when you lose like your entire bar of XP.
Man, it sucked. Like
you really don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I built up those 2 bars over the course of like 2 days of like kind of like not playing a lot, but like if you play like 5 or 6 hours over 2 days, you get 2 bars out of 5 of experience. And then like that last night I died twice and lost like one of those bars, so it just like completely negated like a whole day of play. in like less than the space of like 2 minutes. Those two deaths came.
Yeah, you kind of get in a bitter mood. So then that day John died, he's like in a bitter mood and kind of doesn't want to keep playing. Then I think the next day I died a bunch of times and like
Right,
I
and
ended up
like
in a bitter mood.
yeah, and
And
like all you do is like you grind and kill the monsters, and then like when you die, you just like see all those like repetitions of killing the monsters like slipping out of your hands.
yeah, but we were arguing about the death penalty in the game and how vicious and brutal it is. And it does inspire you to, change your build, make a better build, see what other people have done. And it is satisfying to, encounter a problem and solve it and get past the problem. But it's not easy. It's not easy to solve the problem in
Right,
that
and
game, and
yeah.
there's no like help. There's
Oh
no
yeah, and there's
help
not
for
there's
solving the
not always
problem.
a clear path to improving your character, and if you kind of like can't see it or can't like think of it, and like maybe like the only way you're gonna improve is some better gear, it's just like hard to keep engaging with.
Yeah, but the game was successful in kind of retaining us as players because we were both dying to try the new melee
Right. I
mechanics.
mean,
And
yeah, like I can't wait to try it. Like
yeah, and
it's
see the
they
new
added
league and
like
everything.
yeah, they added the dodge. Like it seems like the game could have used like a dodge mechanic, just as like something to wail on when you're like running across the map if nothing else.
I'll also say, and I don't know if we mentioned this in the other video, but every night that we've played together, each of us, I would say, has had at least two blue screens
Oh yeah,
in the
that
middle of the game.
right. And I guess that's probably like a PS4 specific issue, less than like I mean
Yeah,
maybe people on computer are crashing too.
no, I don't think
But
so.
right, yeah. So if you're playing Path of Exile on PS4, like they didn't fix that yet. Maybe they'll fix it eventually. Like I feel like they're a company that might fix it, but it could just be something wrong with like PlayStation too.
Yeah, and I don't know how often other people are blue screening versus the other performance issues people have, like the lag or what. Oh, we had some video showing that just jerky, horrific
Oh right, like
lag
just
in
the
there.
it's possible in Path of Exile for like the frame rate to drop to 2 just because of like how much garbage is going on. And so that's pretty annoying, but I also don't think that's something that they'll ever fix
Oh yeah,
cuz it's just like a limitation with the PlayStation's like processing power.
yeah. But I was trying to say, like, when you're getting 2, 3 blue screens per night. Oh, and then here's the other thing. I can't believe I completely forgot this. John could no longer get into my memory nexus. It
Oh,
just wouldn't work. It's some kind of like bizarre, horrific, pernicious bug.
right. That made us turn the game off one night just because like I had done all my memory nexus stuff and Genevieve needed to do it. We could like see all these really cool chests that were
Just
like
piling up in
yeah,
there.
and
Yeah.
I like my PlayStation account or like whatever the problem was. I just every time I tried to teleport to Genevieve's Nexus, it would send me to some like the Templar laboratory, just some like garbagey part of the game, and I couldn't get there at
In the
all.
in the past, that had happened. That particular glitch, like where we were in the Templar laboratory, then tried to get to the memory nexus or something, and it wouldn't work. And we were able to get there by traveling somewhere else or restarting the game or something or other, but finally we couldn't anymore. So I'm just trying to say it was like some of the bitterness over those deaths again, then the new league coming out, and then those those performance issues kind of
Right.
remaining finally
And
made us.
yeah, and that's just like a maddening bug too
Yeah.
because like it completely shut us out of the game, but it also wasn't something that you could like send a ticket in for or like reboot the game and fix. Like it was just like a bug that existed that was probably never going to be acknowledged and like maybe someday in the future something will change and like the bug won't be there. But like as long as it was there, it was really hard for us to like play together. So that was like all those things kind of like added up to us not playing Path of Exile anymore. And anyway, moving on to our next topic that's related to that is we kind of stopped playing Path of Exile and we like weren't quite sure what other game we were going to play. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sucks to not have like a game you play. We like remember those times we were like just looking at like our game library
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
all just looked like hell. Like it, none of it seemed good. But anyway, during that time, I got like an email from Sony about like this new ARPG coming out called Dauntless, and so I downloaded it to our PlayStation. It's kind of like sight unseen. And do you want to describe Dauntless?
Well, we were just completely flabbergasted to open just this kind of like ugly, crappy Monster Hunter with the same flying paper airship and kind of like
Oh
burly
yeah, and like
bur-
so anyway,
burly
Dauntless.
hunter man
Yeah,
telling you
like in
something.
case you don't know, Dauntless. I don't know when it was released. It was recently released on PlayStation 4 though, and it is just a straight up clone of Monster Hunter World. Like the first cutscene is like you're like going into the mess hall on the ship. Remember that
Yeah, yeah.
opening cutscene on Monster Hunter? And then like just like in Monster Hunter, like a monster or something like that, like sends
Knocks you off the
yeah,
ship. Yeah.
and then like your guy's like grasping at like trying to hang on to the ship, and then you like tumble out and you come into this messed up like island type world, and it's just like it's everything about the game is a clone of Monster Hunter, and it was like trippy logging into this without knowing it. And we were like, wow, like look at that, it's just like Monster Hunter, and we had no idea what it was about at first.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't know what kind of game we were about to play.
Right, and so we didn't end up playing very much of that. I think we could only tolerate it for like one night,
Yeah,
right?
so you had to wait to get onto the server.
Oh
And
right.
that seemed, at first I was excited because I thought, oh, maybe, well, we thought,
Oh, right. We thought like, oh, if there's an actual queue to get in, then like maybe it's a pretty good game. And we thought that if they were like kind of preventing players from logging
well,
in and making it really
yeah,
laggy.
we thought it was open world, I guess, at that
Right.
time.
Yeah,
And
it
I thought, like, okay, it's like limited, so maybe the performance in there is really good. But it wasn't actually an open world
no,
game.
it's not open world at all. And I guess at first it was like kind of interesting because I thought like, oh man, like maybe they're cloning Monster Hunter and they're like adding these things that like kind of like would expand on Monster Hunter World somehow or like be better. And I guess one of the things we thought is that it might be like an open world version of Monster
Yeah,
Hunter.
yeah,
I'm
but
not sure why.
it wasn't.
Right, it wasn't. It was like it was just a bad version of Monster
They
Hunter.
took away all the things that added like a character or charm or a little bit of interest to Monster Hunter.
Right, like there was no like Palico, or maybe there'll be one later,
Yeah, no Palico,
but
no
like
tracking the
oh
monster,
yeah, there was.
no.
Oh, so anyway, in Dauntless, it's really weird, but there's like the town where you go, and then pretty much the only thing you can do is like queue into like a next monster to kill, you know?
Yeah, in Dauntless, they seem to just pretty much you click into the mission and they kind of hand you the monster
Oh
there
yeah,
on the
so
platter.
right, in Dauntless when you go into the mission, if you just run your character forward, the monster will be like sitting there kind of like waiting for you. And
Yeah,
then
except one mission, none of us found it. Nobody in the group, and so everyone ran around for like more than 10 minutes looking for the stupid
right, just
monster. But there was no
aimlessly.
way to actually track it or
Yeah, yeah. So like
find where it
all
was.
the kind of stuff in Monster Hunter that's cool, like the spores on the ground, and you're like tracking the monster through this kind of like serene island place, and like you're like looking at all the scenery. And so in Dauntless, that's all just like completely cut out. Like you just
Yeah,
go
you just
straight to
gotta
the
kill him,
monster
take care of
and
him.
you kill him. And I guess like what I will say about it is the combat seemed to be done okay, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and there were like different weapons just like in Monster Hunter, and each weapon had its own move set, and like anything you can like describe in Dauntless is just a pretty clear rip off of like the stuff that's in Monster Hunter. And so it's just like done differently, and oh, and it's free to play. That's like the big
Hmm.
difference. It's like it's much worse and it's free to play. So I
And
mean,
then
oh,
so
sorry,
it's
go on.
so you gotta wait in the queue to get in the game. Then it has a home base world or whatever where you can talk to the different NPCs and go out on your mission. Then when you go on your mission, it was Fortnite like, where you sit in like a queue screen with the other players
Oh
and you can
right.
go on
Oh
doing
yeah,
stuff.
and by the way, it's like published by Epic Games,
Yeah,
Fortnite
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
and so like there's all these kind of like funny UI elements that are like clones off of Fortnite. Like when you're waiting 2 minutes to begin the mission,
Mhm.
and it shows like the players, like your group members or whatever, and you can kind of like change your gear. But like that was like a Fortnite UI element, so it was kind of like freaky or weird to see all these like Fortnite aspects from Epic Games ostensibly that were like living in this bizarre free to play Monster Hunter clone.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. I'm trying to say though. So anyway, then you sit in that screen and you wait. Then you sit in another screen and you wait, and then obviously the game gets tougher as you level up and yada yada. The monsters probably get a little more difficult, but then each mission was like much
It
less than 10 minutes.
Right, it was between like 3 and 6 minutes, depending on
On how
how
bad you
aggressive.
did.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
how aggressively everybody like wailed on the monster or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
and then I remember seeing the like bonus if you kill the monster in less than 3 minutes. So it
Oh right,
actually, it
it was
wouldn't
like
be unreasonable to spend, it's like at least 4 to 6 minutes queuing into this
oh right,
mission
yeah.
and
So
kill the dinosaur in 3 minutes, and then you're done.
right, that was like another terrible aspect. But like, there's lots of games kind of like that, but the loading screens were like at least 5 minutes. You'd agree with that? Like the load different,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to get from like the end of a mission to your next mission in Dauntless, you were waiting like at least 4 minutes if you went quick. But if you kind of like looked at the menus and stuff, you
Or
were
like crafted one item, you're
yeah,
up to
you
like
were
10,
like
12
like
minutes.
even 15 minutes between missions, and these were missions
Missions
that
that could last 3
yeah,
minutes,
three
as little
minutes.
as three
So like
minutes.
it was a game that like if you look at it, probably if you had a chart like a bar chart, the amount of time playing would like comprise like 20% of the chart, and then the amount of time spent like in load screens and menus is like the other 80%. And so that was really irritating about Dauntless. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
made us it made us think more, especially because we play together and we play every game together. So when we're in our respective menus, or what, it's like a real kind of boring,
right,
nasty, dead time.
it's downtime,
It's
just like
it's downtime, especially when there's like two people in the room and you're looking
oh
at your
yeah,
crappy
yeah.
gear or whatever.
Right. So it's funny because like we're probably more sensitive to
Oh
the amount
yeah,
of
to how
time you
much time
spend
we
playing
waste.
the game.
Mhm.
But like it's really true that there are games that will just pit you in menus for like most of the freaking time you're playing.
Mhm.
And so you don't get to like do very much gameplay. Dauntless definitely a game in that genre where you're just like mostly in menus, and then there's these like kind of bizarre short-lived instances that are like a little bit intense, and then it's over quickly.
So short-lived. I don't know if we've played any other game that had like an actual kind of like three different load screens for a 3 minute instance. That's just insane.
Right, right.
And we were thinking about, in Fortnite, I think they're like 40 minutes or something, in
At the mission length.
20 to 40 or
Right. In
something.
Fortnite there were some missions that would last like always last like 15 minutes or 18 minutes, like remember like rescue
Oh
survivors.
yeah, yeah, there were some
So like
shorter
you were
ones.
guaranteed like 18 minutes of play, but then there were the more open-ended ones where you could like begin them early, or you could like
Oh yeah.
build a like a fort and like stretch the game out to like 40 or 50 minutes. And then if you remember in Monster Hunter, remember how the missions were like always 50 minutes,
Mhm.
and like you were expected to like play for like, around 25 to 40, maybe 50 minutes.
Mhm.
And
And
like
we're the ones where you could kill all three monsters. Were
so
those 40 minutes as
that
well?
that
Or?
was interesting in Monster Hunter just because some of those bounties, I think they were called, some of them were harder because they had shorter time limits. So
Oh
like
yeah.
remember there was like kill Anjanath in 15 minutes
Mhm.
and you would get like the gold rewards or whatever. So any like that was I forget what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, well we were trying to come around to thinking about the just like terrible instances in that Dauntless game. Oh, I was trying to say, like, when you're sitting there with like in between 3 different load screens with like all those NPCs and like trying to craft something. Then you get into that 3-minute menu and you're like straight back there again. You really just want to turn off the game and go to sleep.
Right.
There's like nothing more kind of boring and your mind starts to wander. Anyway, so what we ended up playing and we're coming around to is we started playing Division 2.
Yeah, so like we played Dauntless for like a day and we couldn't like really do it. Did we try anything else in the meantime?
I think we might have, but I can't remember now.
But we picked Division 2 back up and
Oh, we had been playing Warframe a little bit,
oh
and Warframe was annoying for the exact same reason.
yeah, for Warframe, short missions.
Yeah, short
First
missions.
of all, like the missions are real short. And in Warframe the missions are not very engaging either. Or else they're like really involved and like irritating, like the spy missions. Remember those?
Yeah. I kept whining about Warframe. We had tried to play it like years ago, and it's just you go through the tunnels, and the enemies are in the tunnels, and you kind of progress through the tunnels, and the enemies are in the tunnels, and it's like I can't keep getting interested in that like exact same type of moving through a tunnel
Right.
and the enemy
And
popping
yeah,
up
we
in the
came
tunnel.
back to Warframe like 3 years or maybe it was 2 years,
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. And like it was like the same tunnels.
Yeah, and this
But
time we played it enough to learn that like the combat and stuff is pretty cool. It's
right,
pretty
yeah,
like
the
cool and
combat
open
it's
ended
one
and
of
like
the cooler combat systems in like among all games we've played. Like
yeah,
it's pretty good. But like the missions, like they're short. And then between each mission, there's like those annoying, like the stupid flying.
Oh yeah, the flying spaceship.
Yeah, the flying spaceship. So you like come out of your Warframe mission and you like move your spaceship around. Then your guy ends up being like inside a bigger spaceship.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like sit there and like look at your like mods and gear and then look at the map for a while. And then you like kind of like wait a bit, you load into another mission, and then
Back
you
in
got
the
like your
spaceship.
spaceships, and like you've
Yeah.
been like between the spaceships, it's been like 12 minutes, and then like each spaceship screen is about a minute and a half. So like you spent 15 minutes like in the spaceship in a different spaceship doing nothing, and then you're queuing into like a mission that might last you 6 minutes.
Mhm.
And like if you're lucky in Warframe, some of those missions are like maybe 12 or 15 or something like that. But then also we were just having trouble even like staying in the same group and completing missions. Remember
In
that?
Warframe?
Yeah. Like remember
Something
how
went
like
wrong.
we were trying
Something
to do
went
a mission and like Genevieve got like booted out of the
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
And then there's like the strange open world parts. But anyway, we playing Warframe, most of our time was spent somehow like fighting the Warframe UI instead of actually like hopping around and like killing monsters or whatever. But I will say I played the PvP for a second. That was okay. But I guess I don't want to talk about it.
Well, after playing those games, we were so happy to click into Division.
Oh
and,
right. So
and
yeah,
be able to like play continuously for like 40 minutes or an hour or however long we kind of wanted, wandering through a map. It was like such a pleasure that we were gonna stick with the game a little more. I think
right.
we played it a little while ago, just a little bit, but
Yeah, like when it first came out, we played it just like a little bit, but I forget what.
oh
other
yeah,
game.
so funny thing about that, when it first came out, we played it a little bit and we both got that for our like first skill. We got something that just
we got just a terrible skill. It was like reveal enemies on the map.
revealed enemies on the map.
Right, and like the whole time you're just like in Division 2, you're like looking for enemies anyway, so it wasn't a great skill.
Well,
but
so anyway, I thought that it was like mainly a shooter game, and that the skills were kind of like a little bit utility skills, not damage skills. And then this time when we turned it on, we were kind of shocked to discover that you can the skills are really useful, and it's not something
right.
so crappy as just showing an enemy that you could have seen on the mini map anyway. So that completely colored our impressions of it the first time we played it, that we both had such a junky skill, and when you're in the low level, it takes a little while before you can pick another skill. So I don't even think we got there the first time we
Right,
played it.
and so this time we kind of like we picked the stupid turret, like a stationary turret, and like it's pretty good. It's like it'll help you like get through, especially the early levels when you like you don't even know how anything works.
Yeah, we've
But
been having a ton of fun
yeah,
playing it.
yeah, the skills are like cool. I kind of want to talk about just like my first kind of like impressions about Division 2, which I want to talk about even like way back when we first
Yeah,
tried it.
yeah, go for it.
But Division 2, it's like a gorgeous game. Like the game engine is like one of the most like advanced I feel like I've ever played, and like the movement and the motion and the shooting and like the way the cover works and just everything's like really well done, and the user interface is really well done. And so it was like impressive just like experiencing that stuff. And like they really are in that game like way beyond what like a lot of other games are doing. Just and so like the combat is like hyper realistic, the shooting is hyper realistic. You really like feel the gravity in the game. Like overall it's just like really well done, which isn't to say that there's like nothing bad in it or that like other gamers don't have like criticisms, but just like
All the environments and all the environments in the game are so detailed and
right. It's like a pure pleasure just even to like move your character forward through like the street scenes. And then there's like one scene in particular that really struck me was like they have you go into a planetarium, and it's like it has that same kind of like starry sky map that they have here in Chicago, like Adler Planetarium. And then they have you doing like a full on firefight in the middle of the planetarium, and it's just like when the game is rendered so hyper realistically, it really like transports you to be like to have like a guy in those situations just like fighting or shooting or whatever. So I thought that was kind of like a cool thing. It's like a way the game is like different or something, or like it's something you can experience in a game that like maybe in other games it hasn't been done. I'm sure it's been done in like many other games, but it's a good experience in particular in Division 2, at least in my opinion.
yeah, and we haven't played the other Tom Clancy or
Right,
Division games or anything.
right. And
I really want to read a Tom Clancy book now because the more that we play the game, the more I'm curious what the heck is actually like the plot or going on in it.
oh yeah,
Because we
and
usually listen to music, so we don't hear.
right, we don't pay attention to like the story, but if you want to know what like the Division really is about, it's like being kind of like a CIA operative in post-apocalyptic America. And it's kind of like violent and nasty in that way, because like you really are just like a covert operative guy, and you're like going around ruined Washington D.C., and I'm pretty sure it's all like modeled on actual Washington D.C. as it almost like exists today. But
Yeah, I was curious about
yeah,
that too,
yeah,
but
so
we need to
like
find out
yeah,
more.
yeah, it's like a game where you're like CIA man. That's like what it is. Oh, but another thing I want to say is we came to Division not really playing shooters. Like Genevieve
Yeah,
doesn't
well,
really like shooting
we had
games too
played
much.
Fortnite,
Yeah, we
Save
played
the World.
Fortnite, we played Borderlands, but we didn't really play shooters too much. So it's kind of like cool how you can be into those like RPG aspects, and then Division is this kind of like bizarre shooting game that's also just has those like kind of standard fare like MMORPG like loot styles. You know what I mean? Where you're like kind of like building your gear and choosing your stuff. And so it's like kind of cool where like if you're more into RPGs, you might actually kind of like Division 2 and like how the progression works, and you might be able to like get into a shooting game that way.
Yeah, yeah, and make use of the skills. I wanted to say that the movement, the way you move in Division 2 is pretty cool. We were kind of comparing it to Naruto that had all this kind of, you could jump and propel yourself in the air and like stick to the walls. Oh, and then in Warframe, you could stick to the walls and kind of creep
Yeah.
along the
Yeah, you
walls
can
like
like
a
like a
spider or something.
spider. Yeah, you're really like a spider in that game.
And then in Division, you're like a roach. I guess you're like a
Yeah,
cockroach 'cause
yeah.
you creep along the obstructions in the cover and then kind of interact with them in that way where you're kind of sliding along and then you
Right,
can
and like yeah, the whole game really just like works on that cover system where like when you're behind the cover and you're using it, you're like effective, and then if you don't, you just kind of like die right away. And then the game is really like smooth in how it lets you like interact with the cover. You know how you can like find the cover and then you can point your cursor at another piece of cover, and there's like a
So that you can
command.
roach along from
Yeah,
here
you
to
can
there
like sprint
over
along
long
like a bug
distances.
or a mouse and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
get like
like a
behind.
rat.
Yeah, yeah. So that's pretty cool. It's well done. The vaulting, like
It
you
would
can.
be just amazing if it also had the Warframe spider wall sticking
Oh
to
yeah,
propel
yeah.
yourself up there, but it's not supposed to be just unrealistic and bamboozling.
Right, and it's pretty cool though, cause like you can really see how when the game has like a nice movement system, you kind of like remember it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and how it's fun to play within it and try to.
Right, and that's like pretty cool though, because part of like what makes the division kind of like charming to do is you can kind of like almost amuse yourself just like moving your guy between cover. And when you can do that, and then there's like combat and like missions and experience or levels or whatever on top of it, it makes for like a pretty decent game.
Yeah, and like we were talking about earlier, excuse me, it's amazing to be able to just kind of play as long as we want.
Oh
We
right.
can come into like a new, I don't know, neighborhood or whatever they are in DC, and then they have different quests or whatever on the map, and you can sit there and do as many as you want without even changing your gear,
Oh
as
right.
long as you
And
want, without being like booted back to like home
yeah, and
base,
like
without load
no
screens.
load screens at all. Like just
Yeah.
right. Like are there even any? Like you can go from in Division
When
2.
you
You can,
fast travel, like,
oh
so you
right.
don't need
So
to fast
yeah,
travel.
if
You could just walk there if you want.
yeah, you
And
can like walk between any area in the game to any other area in the game without seeing a loading screen. So, but if you do fast travel, then you get like a loading screen. So, like you as a player get to kind of choose when you go through that, which is like a great design aspect.
yeah, yeah, and I'm reminded that Fallout 76 was also like that, but there wasn't any fun to be had. There
Right.
wasn't, no matter where you walked or what you did, there wasn't any fun to be had.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so we were earlier talking about like the load screens like in Dauntless and the instanced play.
Hmm.
And so it's like really there's such a stark difference between a game where you're like forced into instances and then you're like going through loading screens to get from instance to instance, compared to like a game that'll give you kind of like, if you choose, you can have like a 40-minute long play session, or like you can shoot enemies for 2 hours or even like 5 hours if you really want to without ever seeing a loading screen. And that makes just like such a huge difference in like one's experience of the game.
Yeah, yeah, and especially for us playing together.
Right, right. So anyway, we recommend Division 2. I guess it's pretty expensive. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
but we're still little in the game. We haven't tried any PvP yet. I
Oh, right.
see.
There's all these game modes that we haven't even like.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
enjoying being
Being
little.
babies, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah, and
taking our
that's
time
yeah,
on
that's
that.
always like a good part of a game when you can like enjoy being a baby.
Yeah, and where all the gear you get is good because
Oh
it's
yeah,
better.
yeah, and like yeah, like we're like leveling up and getting new gear, so that's like enjoyable while it lasts.
Yeah, let us know if there's any games you want to recommend to us that you think we would enjoy.
Right. So yeah, I guess we went through most of our topics or all of them, right? So
Yeah.
we're wrapping up, I guess. um
Yeah, thanks if you
Yeah,
watch
so
this.
yeah,
Let us know what you think.
if you've actually sat through it all, hopefully you like the video, subscribe, just visit our website. We're still putting up content. We're still doing videos, as attested to by this video. And so yeah, anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day.